Today we will look at what makes these two pairs of shoes different from each other and why it's important. Let's go ahead and get started. Excellent, thanks for joining. So today we're going to look at 4 different pairs made out of Horween shell Cordovan. And these 4 pairs are going to range from the Goodyear welted factory constructed boot all the way up the spectrum to the fully handmade, artisanal workshop bespoke style construction. And I do want to set the expectation as we're getting an initial look. I'm not comparing these against one another, but using them as a baseline to kind of differentiate the details. So if you find this helpful, definitely reminder to like and subscribe for your notifications. But let's start looking at this pair of Carmina, which is Goodyear welted in bourbon shell Cordovan. And this is a factory made shoe, which is, very integral part of the collection that I have and enjoy. But looking at the details here, we're going to start with the upper. Carmina does a very good job, and in this kind of factory made range, the shell is really what's shining and what is the key to the entire shoe, because that's really where the value and the price point is coming from, is the materials. So looking at the kind of the outsole, the stitching and finishing on this pair and this range in general, it's a factory made shoe, but the stitching is done very cleanly. It's nothing amazing or anything that's going to be kind of shocking to see, but it's going to be very solid, very respectable, and something that should kind of go unnoticed, because it's not terrible and it's not amazing, but it's just exactly what you would expect a shoe to produce. So that's kind of like right where like the benchmark is for shell Cordovan shoes, is right in that range of Goodyear welted factory made. Now we would transition into a very comparable boot. This is from Enzo Bonafè, and this is what I would consider kind of your entry level hand welted ranges, because this is now a hand welted shoe or hand welted boot, but it's still going to be very comparable with the Goodyear welted factory made shoe. There's not going to be a huge jump in differentiating details, but there's going to be the hand welted construction that will raise this up above the previous shoe a little bit, and some of the finer details are going to be a little more aesthetically pleasing, because it's just getting that extra attention to detail. It's just going to be a little more finely executed, like the outsole stitching here. The outsole may be the day night versus the kind of Shoemaker branded version of it, just small details like that, but on the overall scale it'll compare strongly with the Goodyear welted factory range when we're sitting right here at this level. So as we begin to move on to the St. Crispins and look at that against the Enzo Bonafè, which is really where you're going to begin to see a much stronger difference between the fully handmade shoe and the entry-level hand-welted shoe. Now, I'll caveat a St. Crispin's still does a machine-stitched outsole, but it's much closer to the fully handmade range than it is the factory made. So when we look at this, we'll start with the upper, which is crafted very, very well. It's a cleanly lasted shoe. The shoe is obviously hand lasted, which should mention that for the Enzo Bonafè, St. Crispin's, and the ACME are all hand lasted shoes, and you're going to begin to see the beveled and blind waist at this range, which basically just means the outsole stitching goes from the start of the waist around the front to the start of the other waist side of the waist. So just the forefoot, and then through the waist, it is either pegged, or a blind stitch is done to where you can't even see it, and it has a blind waist which creates even a more exaggerated silhouette and shape from the forefoot through the mid body, back to the heel, which is both an aesthetically pleasing look, but it also is the result of like structure and the fit and the support being built into the shoe, because as you get narrower and tighter waists and heels, you're going to get a tighter fit and you're going to get a more supportive shoe through the instep and the arch, which really makes a huge difference in just how well it fits and feels. Now we're looking at ACME on the left, St. Crispin's on the right. While both are extremely well-made shoes, the jump up in quality and detail of construction, I think from the St. Crispin's to the ACME, is the largest gap that you're going to see. Nothing, and again, I'm not comparing the shoes, just comparing kind of the ranges of shoes that are out there. And why I say that is because here you're going to see extremely fine transitions from one section of the shoe to the next, with all of the details very, very highly refined, such as your outsole stitch done by hand, transitioned into an extremely tight blind waist, beveled down from a double sole to a single blind beveled waist that transitions and has the notched heel into the kind of leather stacked heel, and it just kind of takes everything to the next level as far as there aren't really any details here that have gone unnoticed. One of which I'm gonna call out here, and is something that most, including myself until recently, never even really paid attention to. But if you look at the ACME on the left, St. Crispin's on the right, you're going to see the fudge wheel is very detailed, more so on the ACME. It's a finer stitch on the ACME, which you can't even see, but you also have this edge wall on the fudging that is just that little detail that goes unnoticed, but when you see it, it makes a huge difference as to like, oh, I get it. Like, it's not there on this one, but it is on here, and it makes an aesthetic difference that makes the overall finishing of the shoe much more pleasing to look at. So here is just another example of where you're comparing a lot of the differentiation from one level to the next. And I do want to caveat, because I'm not saying the one level is superior to the other. Well, I am, but I'm just saying, like, they shouldn't be compared apples to apples, because they're not. They're different levels of construction, different levels of shoes. So I hope this was helpful. I know this was a lot of information to kind of digest and go over, but let me know what you think in the comments. If it's something that you want to hear more of, please let me know. If you have questions, let me know. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so that you can find out about what's coming up next.